Welcome to our Common Sense channel. Today's topic is how have lies about Africa and Africans affected Black liberation? Now, Devin Morgan is a writer and researcher. Two of his books are Demystifying Cancer, Exposing the Deception of the No Cure for Cancer, and The World Common Sense Challenges. They are available on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, or directly using the email address in the description. So, greetings, Brother Devon.
Yes, greetings, Brother Turk.
So, what are the main lies about Africa that have divided and caused many of us not to want to identify as Africans or even resent them?
There are many, but we are just going to focus on just one. Malcolm X will mention a few more in a video shortly. The big lie claims that slavery happened because our ancestors sold us out to our conquerors.
Hmm. So, how does this lie affect our quest for Black liberation?
Yeah, this lie caused resentment and anger and hate amongst many in the diaspora, and this pushed them away from claiming their African heritage. We need Africa and Africa need us. We cannot achieve freedom and power if we resent and don't identify with each other and hate our homeland. If Africa rises and we are not part of this, we will lose our chance to raise our status in the world and at least start the process of liberation. We will not have a powerful culture unless it's backed by Africa. The same way Chinese people are backed by China. We will not have self-determination if we are controlled and dictated to by Europeans. Now, here's Malcolm X talking about this issue.
Why should the black man in America concern himself, since we've been away from the African continent for 400 years, 300 or 400 years? Why should we concern ourselves? What impact does what happened to them have upon us? Number one, first you have to realize that up until 1959, Africa was dominated by the colonial powers, and by the colonial powers of Europe having complete control over Africa, they projected the image of Africa negatively. They projected Africa always in a negative light. Jungles, savages, cannibals, nothing civilized. And naturally it was so negative until it was negative to you and me. And you and I began to hate it. We didn't want anybody to tell us anything about Africa, and much less call us an African. And in hating Africa and hating the African, we ended up even hating ourselves without even realizing it. Because you can't hate the roots of a tree and not hate the tree. You can't hate your origin and not end up hating yourself. You can't hate Africa and not hate yourself. And you show me one of these people over here who have been thoroughly brainwashed, who has a negative attitude toward Africa, and I'll show you one that has a negative attitude toward himself.
So, how do we set the record straight?
Firstly, we need to know a bit of history surrounding this issue. Europeans attacked Africa for centuries and were defeated on many occasions. Time before they were defeated on many occasions, and before they eventually were able to start to enslave Africans, basically. And this only happened after they invented guns, and in particular, what they call a Gatling gun, which is a machine gun. Now, during this period, we never stopped resisting, really. Now, however, according to historian Robin Walker, they were able to persuade a tiny number of leaders to help them capture Africans from other tribes. And they did this by offering them guns to defend themselves against other slave raiders, which is just amazing. However, most leaders wouldn't help them and fought to the death. Some kings, even kings, accepted death instead of helping them. There is a story where Ghana refused to let them pass through their territory to raid Nigeria. They positioned their guns off the coast and threatened to bomb them out of existence if they didn't comply. So they had to comply to survive because we couldn't match up to any of that.
Mhm. So, what about the claims that African practiced slavery and therefore was willing to hand over their people?
Now, before I answer this our audience must understand what Africans practice and how it was different to what Europeans practiced when they enslaved us. It was as different as night from day. Let me quote. Slavery existed in Africa, and I wouldn't use the word slavery, and the audience can judge for themselves if we should change the word. So let me start again. So slavery exists in Africa, but it was not the same type of slavery that the Europeans introduced. The European form was called chattel slavery. A chattel slave is a piece of property with no rights. Slavery within Africa was different. A slave might be enslaved to pay off a debt or pay for a crime. Slaves in Africa lost the protection of their families and their place in society through enslavement. But eventually, they or their children might become part of their master's family and become free. This was unlike chattel slavery, in which enslaved Africans were enslaved for life, as were their children and grandchildren. The resentment of slaves in Africa, the treatment of slaves in Africa varied widely. Let me see if I can pronounce these properly. Otoba Kuguano, a former slave, remembered slaves as being well fed and treated well. Olada Ikwano, another former slave who wrote an account of his life, noted that slaves might even own slaves themselves. And in larger states, some slaves worked in government administration and might become an important state or royal official with wide-ranging powers. Imagine that, a royal official. End of quote.
That's amazing. So compared to slavery practiced by Europeans, it's amazing that a slave could gain power.
Yes, make a special note of one of the ways a person becomes a slave: to pay for a crime. This is an indication that jails was not commonplace and wasn't a commonplace thing, and Robin Walker confirmed this, or historian Robin Walker. And servitude to pay for a debt to society as punishment for a crime. A similarity to what we have now is what we call community service. I think that's similar to what they practice. According to historian Robin Walker, based on the benefits they receive from the system of servitude they practice, they would have no incentives to hand over their people to Europeans.
That's true. So this understanding would stop a lot of anger amongst some of us.
Yes, the anger is very real. I had a debate with someone recently about this and told him that we had been lied to about this part of our history. I told him this was a minor part of what happened, and he just wasn't having it. I asked him what percentage of enslaved Africans he reckon were sold by our ancestors, and he made the amazing claim that it would be 95%. This made no sense because there were millions of us who were captured and enslaved. For this to be true, it would take probably maybe thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of us over so many years that it happened to fight and capture that many people. And since Africans resisted, many of those who tried to capture them would die, which we have no record of that.
So yes, his claim sounds impractical. So what else do we need to do to achieve liberation?
Yes, once we get all this, once we stop hating being called African, once we find out who we are, what we will love being an African, we will love being black. Melanin gives our skin its color, all shades of brown and black, and it is the reason we are the fastest people on the planet. It's to do with melanin, not food. We have the most rhythm, again, that's to do with melanin. That's why we are the best dancers. You will learn a lot more about this shortly. Once we understand this, we will not bleach our skin, which is harmful to our health. Once we get rid of all the negative about being black, we will recognize the beauty of our various shades of black and brown. Here's Dr. Africa talking about the benefits of melanin being black.
I appreciate the introduction. This evening we're going to talk about something called melanin. It's what everyone is concerned about in the world. It's what they have a meeting about every 3 to 5 years. Germany, Italy, France, the U.S., they meet every 3 to 5 years and have a melanin convention and discuss the latest research in melanin. They have never invited a black scientist to that meeting in history. So we have had our own melanin conferences where we discuss this information involving melanin. Melanin is commonly associated with the pigment that causes your skin to be brown. So we figure that that's what melanin is about. But it's a little more than just the pigment that makes your skin brown. It's what we call a chemical key to life. The more melanin you have, the more civilized you are. The more melanin you have, the more psychic you are. The more melanin you have, the more information your brain can store. The more melanin you have, the faster the nerve transmissions are. The more melanin you have, the more sound you absorb in your ear, so you hear the full range of sound. No other race can do that. The more melanin you have, the more color you can absorb in your eyes. That's why your eyes are brown. You actually see the full color. You see this color, where white folks see a paler tan, because the more melanin you have, the more you can see what God has meant for you to see. The more melanin you have in your taste buds, the more you can taste the full flavor of the food. No other race can taste an apple like you can, because they can't absorb the full flavor, because you need melanin to absorb the full flavor of food. That's why we combine food differently from other races, because we actually can taste the food. That's because of the high amount of melanin we have, which we sometimes take for granted. Melanin is the chemical key to life. There is nothing else to study in science but melanin. We call it chemi, which means black. The people who study melanin particles call what they're studying, the sciences call chemistry, what you call chemistry, the study of melanin particles that go around in an orbit, and we call them electrons, protons, solitons. Those are melanin particles. That's why we call it chemistry. And the country you come from is called Kemet, which some people call Egypt. There's nothing else to study but melanin. And if you study chemistry or heard of chemistry and haven't heard the word melanin, you have just been studying social science. You go into a classroom and you call it biology, but biology is the way melanin controls the cell. And we call that little melanin sitting in the cell the new sun, the nucleus. The new sun radiates information and tells the cell how to operate, how to think, how to digest. That's melanin. Biology is the study of melanin and how it communicates. There's nothing else to study in if you're going into the living sciences. Melanin plays a part in your historical memory. The more melanin you have, the more you're connected to your ancestors. You can pull on thoughts that you didn't even know were there, because melanin gives you ancestral memory. That's based on melanin. That's how we classify races, based on their melanin content. It's not the quality of melanin in your skin we're talking about. It doesn't mean a light-skinned brother is less black than you are. We're talking about the melanins produced inside their body by the pineal gland. That's the melanin we measure. Every living thing has to have melanin. White people have it, but they have a lesser amount. And their melanin is different from your melanin. Their melanin has sulfur in the middle, and your melanin has selenium in the middle.
So, any other comment?
Yes, hopefully we will all eventually accept the truth of what he's saying. We already have the physical evidence of what we are capable of. Once we recognize and accept our uniqueness and get rid of all negativity about being black and being African, it will be the starting point of claiming our rightful place in the world. Well, please join our team and help us grow by subscribing. Liking this video so that it will be visible to others, and leave a comment and share. And I will see you all in the next episode.
So same from me. Please just like the video, subscribe to the channel to help us grow, and leave a comment.